Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to the Mardiyah show, where we're talking about the topic of recidivism and this culture or this cycle of Muslims going in and out of the prison system. Today with me is my guest, Dr. Shahdeed Shabazz. Dr. Shahdeed Shabazz developed a theory called brotherhooding, which is, he took this concept of revolution to self-evolution, taken from some of the most notorious groups that have emerged in American culture, such as the Black Panthers, as well as the movement of, better known as the Nation of Islam. And taking those movements and the revolution that those movements were predicated on, and the self-evolution that those revolutions led to later on in the lives of the people that were involved in those movements. And inshallah ta'ala, today he is with me on the Mardiyah show to talk about the issue or the topic of recidivism. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thanks for coming on the show, Dr. Shabazz.
No problem.
MashaAllah.
Happy to be here.
MashaAllah.
MashaAllah.
And for those that don't know, Dr. Shabazz used to actually be my supervisor. I was a clinical counselor at one point in my life, and Dr. Shahdeed Shabazz was my supervisor. So let's jump right into this. Define for myself as well as the audience recidivism. What does that even mean, and how does that relate to our current situation as African American Muslims?
Alhamdulillah. Well, recidivism is real simple, right? But you got to understand, recidivism is like a research word. It's a word that helps people get funding, right?
Wow.
You know, that's what really recidivism is. So recidivism just means individuals that come back into the prison system,
okay, or
into the criminal justice system.
Okay.
So if a person come back in the criminal justice system, they get checked off as recidivism,
okay,
but as a recidivist. But you know it goes much deeper than that,
okay,
right? Because the individuals could still be reoffending and committing crimes, and as long as they don't get caught, right, the system is working.
Okay.
Because that is not checked off.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
So you got to be real careful about the language that they put out there.
So
right?
as long as they haven't recidivated, if I could use that word, then that means that the system is working.
It's working fine. Right?
Wow.
They can sell more drugs, they can commit more crimes, do whatever they do. Right? But we try to focus on what relapse is,
okay,
and relapse in the behavior. So if we could focus on relapse in the behavior, then we can really address the issue that's happening within the system,
okay,
right? All right, so some of the things you talked about earlier, and I like the way you put that, is talking about jailing,
okay,
right? So the individuals jail, and what that means is they go through this system very quickly, right? And they go through this system in a way that works for them. You got to understand, people do not do anything that they feel doesn't work for them,
okay,
right? So Muslims inside the prison system, they feel as though, and they practice Islam inside the prison system, right? Because they feel as though it works, and they get their needs met.
Okay.
In this
needs, you mean spiritual needs?
Well, that's one,
okay,
but I'm gonna go over the basic needs of a human being. Right, because even though we Muslims, we're human beings too.
That's right.
You know, sometimes we get it all twisted. Just because we Muslim, don't mean all of us like banana splits or chocolate ice cream. You know, we have different flavors, different things that
exactly
hit us.
Different
right?
tastes, exactly.
Different tastes. So I'm gonna talk about the basic needs of a human being. And I'm gonna try to bounce off of that.
Okay.
Because if we don't help the Muslims get their basic needs met, we're gonna have a problem.
Okay.
And
I don't think that we're doing our job as Muslim leaders and professionals in the community. If we're not meeting the needs of the Muslims, then we're not doing our job.
Right. And it's a complicated issue. I think we're doing an okay job, and we definitely could do better. But one need is survival, right? Mm-hmm. Survival is like food, clothing, and shelter. So if a Muslim is in the prison, he getting that, right? Okay. And if he work in the kitchen, or if his boys work in the kitchen, he getting a lot of food. Right? Okay. So he's surviving. And a lot of times they can't do that on the street. Okay. Some Muslims can have a very difficult time navigating survival inside the community.
Wow.
Right? And another need is like freedom. You know, most human beings has a need to feel free, to go here, go there, to do what they want to do, mm-hmm. right? And in prison, kind of, even though you're confined, right? Sometimes you do have freedom to move around, right? And you have a freedom of choice inside the prison system. You could be Muslim, and they cater to the Muslims.
Okay.
You know, like it's no pork. If Ramadan is big inside the prison system. The Muslims get a lot of recognition.
Okay.
Right? And so that's the freedom need. Another one is belonging. You know, all humans want to feel connected to something, connected to people. And in the Islamic community inside the prison, you feel connected. You got your brother. You got your brotherhood.
More so. And the ironic thing about that is that you feel more connected to Islam and the brotherhood of Islam in the prison system than you do in the free world.
In the free world, yeah. All right, so the belonging need, and inside the prison system, you really have that nice connection to belong. You have a nice connection to the Muslims inside those communities, and like you was saying, that it's bigger. It's sometimes the Ummah is bigger in the prison. I talked to somebody the other day, and they're in federal prison. They said it's 250 Muslims, right? They Salat is like gigantic, right? It's almost like Ramadan every day. You know, in our communities, it's 250 Muslims maybe doing Ramadan, inshallah, or maybe doing Jummah, and it depends on the congregation. So you get that need met. You get that need met. Also, it's a need for recognition. Most humans want to be recognized for what they do, and recognition is also connected to power. You get this kind of power. Right? And being a Muslim inside the prison, you get a lot of recognition. And if you have certain positions as a Muslim inside the prison.
Exactly.
So if you the imam, if you're the amir, if you teach in the school, if you the paralegal, you're a Muslim paralegal, you get it's all kind of recognition that you get from that.
Exactly.
Right? So, and another one is joy and fun. Now, the Imam talked about joy and fun, and Islam being joy and funful. It's inshallah, if you can get it, if Islam can be fun for you, and you can get some joy from Islam, it's going to stick with you no matter what, right? So, and it's fun like that. You know, the Muslims laugh, joke, they be together, they had this camaraderie, and they do that, and the years go quicker. Yeah. It go quick.
So they're getting all of these needs met of freedom, belonging, of survival, recognition. They're getting all of these basic human needs met in the prison system. So this is one of the reasons why Islam kind of works for them.
Yes.
But on the flip side of that, they're not embracing the spiritual element of Islam.
Right.
You know, so it's just the mechanical movement. Yeah, I pray. But the prayer is absent, void of certain elements that make the prayer actually meaningful. Exactly.
Right.
You know, it's not necessarily going through the motions of the prayer. How Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decides to reward you for the prayer. It's actually the concentration and, you know, the fact that you are fearful of Allah in your prayer, and you're concentrating on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your prayer, not necessarily that you're going through the motions of the prayer. So, okay, so the recidivism and this issue of going in and out of the prison system, is this something that is a problem in the Islamic community?
I think it's a problem inside the Islamic community because, you know, we're part of the world community, right? And so it's definitely a problem inside the Islamic community. Some Muslims, they grow up in the prison. Some Muslims has been in the prison from adolescent all the way up. Wow. So it's definitely a problem inside the Muslim community. And one of the issues also, I know in Jersey, where I'm from, the Muslims don't come into prison too much. Like I'm working with Jamesburg, I'm working with the adolescents now. No Muslims from the outside volunteer and come in and talk to the brothers. Okay. You know, I tried to get the young Muslims. There's something called the Young Muslim Association. And the Young Muslims is a group that, for young people, and what they do is they meet every Friday at different masjids in the area. Okay. And they have different events and stuff like that they do. Now, these brothers are not African Americans, right? So I was trying to get them connected to the African American community because I thought that the African American community, if they adopted something like that for their young individuals and young people, then maybe they won't, recidivate or go to the prison system, right? Because when our young kids come home, the kids I'm working with, those other affiliations is waiting for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've gotten phone calls from brothers telling me they like, look, Shahdeed, they call me Shahdeed anyway. Shahdeed, I was beefing with this guy. We was beefing real hard, right? And then the next day we was in the front row in ranks making salat, right, together. And I was like, I was baffled by that. And he was like, I don't know what to do. Because he said, after we make salam to angels and we go out in the street and Juma is over, I'm going to my affiliation, he going to his, and we enemies.
Yeah.
Right? So, and quite naturally, I met him inside the system, and he was working real hard not to go back. And it's hard to teach brothers, because that belonging need and all that stuff, they getting those needs met from those affiliations.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? And it's connected into the prison system because, all right, you're Muslim one, right? So you come back into the prison, the Muslims gonna welcome you. Then you got the affiliation, the gangs and stuff, they welcome you in. And you somebody inside the system. You go home, you just another Joe. You just another guy. You just a regular citizen like everybody else. And so you don't get that power need met.
Gotcha.
Now some Muslims do. And we all know the Muslims that do make it and don't recidivate, they get those needs met by being Muslim. Real simple. They get their joy from, getting a family, getting married. Some of them were married already, reconnecting like that. Belonging to the Islamic community, they get that need met like that.
So they're still getting the needs met, but they're getting the needs met through Islam.
Through Islam.
Okay.
Yes.
So
yes.
So then our task becomes trying to get the younger Muslims to understand that the same needs that you get met in prison are the same needs that you can get met in Islam out on the streets. You don't have to go back to prison to get those basic needs met. You can get them met in Islam, in the Islamic community.
You definitely can.
So that leads me to my next question is that is there a stigma associated with incarceration? Meaning when Muslims come home from prison, do they have this like stamp on their forehead that I have been incarcerated? And as a result of this stigma, they are, they experience, some disparities. They experience some prejudices from Muslims who even themselves have been incarcerated before, but because they've been home for a certain amount of time and they've acclimated themselves back into society successfully, that now they can put themselves on a pedestal, and those that are coming home are not embraced when they come home, which pushes them to go back to their old ways. You know?
Well, I don't. It could be, right? I don't see that a whole lot, especially in the African American community. See, in the community I grew up, I'm from the projects too. The little bricks, but we was from the other side of town, the other side of town, and the brother. But the Muslims, they were like guys, the tough guys and everything, the terrorists, they came home Muslim. Okay. You know what I mean? Like they went to the prison, they came home and got their life together. So where I come from, it's like, how can I say, the Muslims get their recognition by coming back to the community as a Muslim, right? And and Islam is like deep, right? Because the Christians and the non-believers, they watch you as a Muslim. I don't know if you ever experienced that. Like let's say it's Ramadan, right? And you might be sick and you can't fast, so you eat. And then the Christian be like, it's Ramadan, you're supposed to be fasting, brother. Like they're on top of you.
Exactly.
Right? So Islam is like that. It's like this microscope on the Muslims. And people look for leadership from the Muslims. So if you're a Muslim in prison and you come home and you practice Islam, it's not that bad inside the masjids. But if you go and you stop practicing Islam and you come back to the masjid and you can't be trusted and stuff like that, then it's some type of stigma.
So, but I'm saying that because some Muslims use this as an excuse to resort back to the old behaviors. It's like, oh, I came home to the Muslim community and they didn't embrace me. No one even gave me the salams. And they use these as excuses. And the only thing that it leads me to believe is that they have expectations that are unrealistic.
Yes, they do. And I try to teach them that. I tried to teach them that, and the master, I said, listen, this is different. You got to really prepare yourself. See, because like in the prison, like Brother Malik gonna wake everybody up for he might be elected. He get that recognition. This is your job. You wake us up for Juma. So now he getting that recognition need met. So he wake everybody up. So the Muslims come and they pray, right? But on the street, you got to get up yourself.
You got to get up yourself,
right? And you got to travel.
Yeah.
Right? You might have to catch the bus. You might have to do this. You might have to go through to get connected to the masjid. It's going to take a lot of effort. It's not as simple as what you're going through right now, right? And expect that you're going to have to struggle, like what it says in the Qur'an. Surely you're going to be tested.
Absolutely.
Who are you that you're not going to be tested?
Absolutely.
So those tests, I try to teach them and try to prepare them. Say, look, Aki, this is what's going to happen. It's alhamdulillah. Sometimes the Muslims have they have talim every day, twice on Sunday. I was like, look, Aki, when you go home, that's alhamdulillah. But I said, when you go home, you're going to experience some things and don't get discouraged. You're going to experience going to the masjid and the door's locked because it's not prayer time. Some masjids open for the 5 prayers for like 15, 20 minutes, and then it's shut, right? You're going to have to establish your Islam on your own.
Exactly.
Right? And like I say, that not to repeat myself, some people do. Some people work through that frustration. Some people don't. Because we know Satan whisper hard.
Yes.
Oh, man, Satan whispered to all of us, and Satan really whispers to individuals inside the system because they had some success with that lifestyle.
Exactly.
Some survival. We talked about that. Some of them make money. Some of them make a lot of money. That's how they feed themselves. That's how they feed their family, right? So now they have to let that go. And they have to get some job like that's not paying that much, right? Also, they have to get a job that might be un-Islamic, like they work in a place, you know how the Muslims is inside the institution. It's like everything got to be, they look for that excellence. Everything got to be excellent, on time and all that. So, but they might have to work in a place where their boss is not Muslim, or the boss say, well, you can't go to Jummah. And that's sometimes as a Muslim, you take a job like that, you know, until you can get on your feet and get another job and so forth and so on.
And it reminds me of when I was a clinical counselor, I had to deal with a situation. A young gentleman came to me as a Muslim, and he was caught between getting a job that made him cut his beard as opposed to not having a job within a certain time and being sent back to prison. Because there are certain halfway houses where they allow them to go out on work release.
Yes.
And in the work release program, they have to have a job. They have to have found a job within a certain amount of time.
Right.
If they don't, they send them back to prison.
Right.
Okay. So here it is. This Muslim, he comes to me and he says, you know, I'm going to get sent back to prison. I said, well, you've been here for, 6 months and you haven't found a job. He said, well, I have a job, but the job wants me to cut my beard. So I said, okay, so what's the problem? He said, I'm not cutting my beard. This is my sunnah. I'm practicing Islam. And I said, okay, so what you're going to end up doing is you're going to get sent back to prison, walking back down the prison yard with your clothes and your pillow and everything with a long beard, but you're back in prison. And then when someone asks you, why are you back? You were sent to the halfway house, a work release program, and you're back in prison because you didn't want to cut your beard. Is that even realistic? And it's like, oh, well, what am I going to shave my beard? Okay, you have 2 options. You have you can stay in the work release program, make some money, save up, because most of them are just one footstep from being homeless, all right? And they don't even realize that. If you are incarcerated and nothing is in your name, you are homeless. If your house is in your baby mother's name, your car is in your mother's name, this is in your sister's name, you are homeless. And you don't realize that. And a lot of them, they have this self-aggrandizement, this self-aggrandizing mentality about themselves that they're larger than life. Even the ones that were using drugs and alcohol, they still live.
They still big time.
They big time in their minds.
In their mind,
So trying to convince them that, you are homeless. I remember, conducting a group session, and I said, how many of you guys are homeless? And maybe 2 people out of, 100 raised their hand. And I said, you got to be kidding me. More than 2 people here are homeless.
Right.
And I said, let me approach it from another angle. I said, how many of you guys have a home right now out in the streets that is in your name?
Yeah,
Nobody. I said, everybody that didn't raise their hand is homeless.
Right.
And it was every single one, single one of them.
Yeah.
And so, they don't realize that their expectations and their outlook on life they have to challenge themselves. And this was the theory that we were using, in the halfway house, REBT, teaching them to challenge their beliefs. Their beliefs.
Right.
Is this rational? Is this logic? Does this make sense?
Right.
So before we conclude, I want you to talk a little bit about the theory of brotherhooding.
Oh, brotherhooding. Well, it was a research that I did with the Nation of Islam, people from men and women from the Nation of Islam and the Black Panther Party of Self-Defense.
Okay.
And it has like 3 main components. One component is forming up, right? And in forming up is something called highlighting the adversary, right? See, there's no movement without an adversary. For us, the Muslims, the adversary is obvious, right? Satan is the adversary. Back then it was the white man, the pigs, or, the society and all that kind of stuff. They was the adversary, right? Another one is cultivating a mindset, right? So your mind has to be cultivated in a way that's conducive to the movement. Okay. And the movement was all about empowering oneself, because we felt that we wasn't empowered, that we felt that we wasn't in charge, right? So, and then the last one is talked about a segmenting moment, right? And the segmenting moment happens because the people I interviewed and the people that was in those movements, for the Nation of Islam, what happened, it was a devastating thing when Elijah Muhammad died.
Okay.
Right? Once Elijah Muhammad passed, the Muslims at that time, the people I interviewed, right, and me, myself, we thought the world was coming to an end, right? Because we thought like we was going to take over and the mothership was going to come, all that kind of stuff. All that stuff that we was invested, yes, we believe that. All that stuff that we invested in, it was like gone. I mean, I don't understand. I mean, I don't know, if I can, I know I might get some flack for this, right? But for the people that was there, like Bilal and them, when the Prophet ﷺ passed away, they had to feel devastated.
Yes, absolutely.
In the Nation of Islam, we was devastated. We didn't know what was going to happen. And also, the Black Panther Party, they was like destroyed by the government, J. Edgar Hoover. Their places was bombed, shot, right? And then they had some internal stuff happening to make their movement non-existent anymore.
Okay.
And so what happened was they utilized all that information, from soldiering, the brothers used from soldiering, the sisters used. They used the stuff from the literature, all that lessons and the things that they learned, and they became inward because they had to reflect then. It's like, well, what we going to do now, right? And so what they did, they used that information to do different things. Some of them became professors, some of them became community activists, some of them went back to school, some of them became doctors in their field.
Absolutely.
Some of them
Angela
grew
Davis.
in so many ways. Some of them became attorneys. I mean, they really did some things with their lives. And that's sort of similar to what the Muslims have to do in order to come home and not recidivate. They got to do brotherhooding. And they have to form
basically taking that energy from all of those lessons and making a better you, making a better person.
You, and utilizing that experience that they went through to become a better you.
And the funny thing is that a lot of them have some real serious experiences that they not just themselves can benefit from, but other people can benefit from. And by recidivating, those experiences and the lessons from those experiences just kind of go to waste.
They go to waste, yeah.
And the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned in authentic hadith, لا يلدغ مؤمن في جحر مرتين, that the believer never gets stung in the same hole twice.
Right.
Meaning that the believer always learns the lessons from those particular incidents or situations they found themselves in. I mean,
Right.
when you look in the Qur'an, you find stories of
Right.
different prophets and
Yeah.
different messengers.
Right.
And the reason that Allah preserved those stories and
Right.
compiled them in the Qur'an
Right.
is so that we can draw lessons from those
Right.
stories.
Right.
You know, Allah mentions in Surah to Yusuf, لَقَدْ كَانَ فِي قَصَصِهِمْ إِبْرَةٌ لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ, that in these stories of these prophets and messengers are lessons for men of understanding.
Right.
They're lessons, and these are not just fables or stories, you know, just for the sake of mentioning them. You know,
Right.
to say, oh wow, that was the story of Prophet Noah, or that was the story of Prophet Abraham. You know, just for the sake of mentioning the story, but there were real lessons in those
Right.
stories. And
Alhamdulillah.
when you look at the Quran and how it was compiled, all of those stories were revealed to the Prophet ﷺ in the Meccan period.
Alhamdulillah.
In the period before he made the migration to Medina.
Alhamdulillah.
And that was because that was a period of struggle. That was a period of strife. That was a period of oppression. That was a period of tyranny. That was a period where Muslims had to, you know, be patient. There was no jihad. There was no defense. You know, there was no revelation given to the Muslims to defend themselves against the atrocities that were, you know, imposed on them.
Right.
You know, so the only thing that they had to do was be patient.
Right.
But when you tell someone to be patient, you have to give them something that they can relate that patience to make the patience relevant. You can't just say to somebody, be patient.
No.
Okay. Oh, but when you say be patient, because there was someone else who went through the same thing you're going through, and this was their
Right.
story, this
Right.
is what happened to them, and
Alhamdulillah.
this is the end result because
Right.
they were patient.
Yeah,
now
Allah.
you have a vivid
Right.
image in your mind of the benefit that comes out of you actually being patient.
Right.
You know, and
So-
and when that's, you know, for us as Muslims, that's kind of a this cliche piece of advice that we give to people. We just say, just be patient. You know,
Right,
as
it's
if
that-
everything will kind of work itself out.
Right.
You know.
So I think the Muslims need to take a lead on this as it relates to recidivism.
Okay.
And we have a lot of stories, like you say. It's Muslims that came through the prison system that's doing great works out there that we don't even know about. Where we might hear about it now and then, but we need to hear. We need to highlight that instead of highlighting all this negative stuff that's going on. Let's highlight the progress that the Muslims have and the positive experience that they have. And we also need to get inside the school system because it's a pipeline in the African American community, and somebody has to
school
move
straight to prison.
to the prison. And there's a movement out there called that. You know, I'm not familiar with them per se, right? But we need to get in there. Any type of intervention that we can be involved with and to help people grow and help the Muslims grow, it's a good thing, you know. And so I think as long as we strive real hard, right, and pray to Allah, Allah going to reward the Muslim. They told me that years ago. They said Allah always reward the Muslim. You got to be patient, right?
Mashallah.
But Allah always reward the Muslim. Just you got to stay ready.
Exactly.
And I think we're ready right now, brother. We got a lot of expertise. We got a lot of knowledge. And there's no excuse.
Exactly.
There's no excuse anymore.
Mashallah.
You know. So
Well,
inshallah.
Dr. Shabazz, I appreciate, you know, you coming on the show and you sharing that information. Can you give us some emails or, you know,
Sure.
websites or phone numbers of where people can contact you and get in touch with you?
I have an email. They could contact me. It's S as in Salam, M as in Muslim, S as in Salam, 1, the number 1, GOD at AOL.com. So they could contact me there.
Okay. Do you have
And
a
then-
website or anything?
I don't have a website at this time.
Okay.
But we have a support group for Muslims coming out of prison that helps them, you know, stay clean, stay off drugs, stay away from that negative activity. So there's some
Mashallah.
other things I'm working on also. So any questions that they have, they can email me at that address, inshallah.
MashaAllah. Well, shukran.
Have
And may
fun.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you immensely
Alhamdulillah.
for coming on the show.
Yes.
And inshallah ta'ala, that's all we have for today. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to benefit from the knowledge that Dr. Shabazz has given us. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the good of this life, the good of the hereafter, and to save us from the hellfire. I'm your host, Shahdeed Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Yes, well,
every masjid, for example, they should have an after-school program, right? They should have clubs for the youth, because one of the real problems is that youth, they have too much free time. What are you going to do with that time? If you're not doing amil salihat or something to prevent you from doing something bad, what are you going to do with that time? Right? You're going to be either wasting it or doing something that's not pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.